everyone. Happy to be here. I'm going to be talking to you about the process of discovering yourself through remote work. Um, you might be wondering how the hell those two concepts come together. I think for me, it started with obviously getting into the remote work setup a couple of years back, and now that I've been working remotely for the last 3 to 4 years, I've become somewhat skeptical about remote work. Um, but more about that in a bit. My name is Lili. I currently live in Copenhagen. I'm an explorer, a creator, a connector. Like I said, I've been working in remote companies for the last 3 to 4 years. I've mainly been in marketing roles across multiple industries and company sizes, spanning from luxury fashion, venture capital, and early to mid-stage startups in mostly health tech and community. I currently work as a freelancer strategist, copywriter, marketer, and a consultant. So, when I was preparing for this presentation, I started reading about remote work and what people are saying, and it's not a new topic. Obviously, we've all been forced in some way or another to work remotely during the pandemic. And what I realized was that remote work often talks about there's these topics that kept coming up as patterns, and it often talks about the work environment, the countries and the different countries that you're operating from within the company, time zones, having to manage that, uh, putting effort into social Zoom hangouts so you can actually get to know your coworkers, productivity, like how do you maintain that, and your home office and desk and chair. You got to have that comfortable chair. And then obviously clear communication. It becomes quite difficult to communicate over a screen. Uh, but what I also realize is that remote work is not a plug and play. It's not like once you tick all those boxes within those buckets, it works and it's easy to go. Um, One of my colleagues once said in a Slack conversation, one of the reasons people are resistant and skeptical about remote work is that it forces you to be intentional about everything. You can't lean on the established scaffolding and sometimes enabling constraints of the 9 to 5 office. It makes you explicitly focus on goals, tasks, internal relationship, etc. It's hard work sometimes. So going back to my skepticism about remote work, now you understand, I started thinking, well, remote work can be really difficult, especially when you focus in on yourself. And so if you're wondering what the hell, then put your hand up and get the hell out of here if you're confused and you're feeling like, what the hell is this conversation about? But really, what I feel and what I've come to learn is that remote work has to work for you. And while not here to promote this individualistic behavior that I think already exists too much in this like self-obsessed society, but I do believe that collective change starts from the individual. And that's why I want to focus this talk on some of the things you can do to center yourself and show up to work and in the world in general with a more authentic and fulfilled version of yourself. So, my journey within all of this, I've jotted down a couple, 3 pillars that I think are important for me. And number one is the intentionality of your days. I often hear where your attention goes, your energy flows. So one of the first things I started really paying attention to is how I spend my mornings. And I noticed that more often than not, I wake up and I check my phone, and before I know it, I'm reading my emails and I'm connecting to everyone else in the world but myself, and work comes first. And so I figured that with this idea of centering yourself, especially in a world where you're kind of removed from everything, it's super important to create a morning routine and to connect to yourself before the world. And why is that? It gives you a centered start to the day. You can kind of check in with yourself and see, what are my thoughts? How am I feeling? Um, so how can you do that? Simple, and first and foremost, don't check your phone as the first thing. It takes time and practice, but I leave it outside of the bedroom so there's an extra barrier. Um, and just cultivate some other routines. So check in with yourself. Ask yourself the question, how am I feeling today? What is one thing I'm excited about, and what's one thing I want to accomplish? Then I usually like to do my bathroom kitchen routine. So, brush your teeth. Helps to maybe switch up the toothbrush in your hand that you usually don't brush it in, just to activate your brain that you don't usually work with. And then make your favorite, cup of tea or coffee. And then I also like to stretch. I also like to move my body, which um, takes me to my next point. But before that, um, yeah, takes me to my next point. Brain frazzle there. Takes me to my next point. Activate your body. So I think a lot of us often, wake up and we're in our minds already, and I think it's super important to not forget about the rest of our existence, the physical part. So why is it important? Motion indicates life. So moving your body also moves your mind. So in the morning, stretching helps, but also make sure that when you're going through your day, you break up your day so you can move in small increments. So it doesn't just have to be your big one workout in the morning or at night. They're great, but also when you're working at home all the time and you're not going to the office, or coming home from the office, it really matters how you spend those kind of times that you gain back. So make sure that there's time and effort and intention in moving your body and putting that into your day. And then the third point within where your attention goes is this idea of self-discipline work. So obviously, when we're going to the offices, or when we're working in more of the more well-known kind of constraints of work and office, we kind of get our tasks done. But when you're at home and you're at the mercy of your laundry or your mail or whatever, your brain goes, I have scatterbrain. Your brain thinks, well, I can get to this piece of work or write that email, but hold on a second, I just need to put another laundry on, or I can see that I didn't make my bed or whatever. There's all these tasks that come to mind, and that's just your mind like coming in and saying, well, you've got other things to do. And that's where your attention is really important to intentionally flow into the thing you're trying to accomplish at work. So some of the examples or tools I use are, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Pomodoro technique. It's just a very simple and useful way to kind of, again, break up your working time into small periods of focus time. There's something I call life admin. So sometimes I co-work with friends, colleagues, and they're like, so what are you focusing on today? And this one time, my friend asked me this question, and I said, well, I've just got a lot of life admin. And he goes, what do you mean? And not only I didn't even have the clear list of what life admin was, but I realized life admin often just takes up your time to focus and create real work. And whilst they're really important, I think it's a good idea to what a lot of people refer to is to eat the frog. And maybe you do have some important life admin to do, but kind of get them out of the way first thing, and then you don't have to worry about those, and you can't really have an excuse of doing life admin that day. So work in bulks. And what I also like to do is split my time and focus on manager time and creator time. And whether or not you're managing the team or you're managing yourself, the latter being, I think, personally more difficult, it's a good idea to split up your attention between tasks and where you're going to be managing things such as life admin or processes, whereas in creator time, you're really trying to get your brain into this flow focus state, right? Where you can and Pomodoro is beautiful for that because you can set, 25 minutes of focused work and really just focus on and create and have a clear outcome for the time that you spent on it. So whilst we're at it, I thought it might make sense to take 3 breaths because we're in our minds, and I do talk about getting in our bodies. So if you're with me and you're watching this, please close your eyes or keep them open, whatever works for you, and kind of just tune into your body for a second. And take those 3 breaths on your own count and just notice how you feel. All right, I hope you're still with me. So number 2, kiss your contradictions. Um, Something I realized, again, through my own experiences, that we're often trying to fit into these kind of buckets of what good looks like, and if you adopt certain things, then you can be the best version of yourself. But something that's dawned upon me is that the point isn't to change who you are by trying to fit into these predetermined ideas of great by using productivity hacks, but the importance is to create the environment that can bring the best version of yourself into reality. Um, and with this "Kiss Your Contradictions" title, I just like the softness of how you approach the difficult sides of yourself. Um, and so it makes me think that a lot of the work in these remote setups where there's a lot of newness still has to do with unlearning, as opposed to this idea of like, let's take in all the new information and figure it out. Why don't we approach it as what are the things that we might need to unlearn for this to work? So what are the hot habits we can let go of in order to give space for the one that actually support you, and how remote work works for you? So as I was working on this presentation, I really struggled to pull my ideas together at the start, staring at this computer day after day, hour by hour. And I just had a hard time getting the ball rolling. And then I closed the computer, took a step back, and I started talking my ideas out loud to my partner. And then I realized that this sort of dialogue that was created allowed my ideas to start flowing. So it became very clear to me that there are certain tasks that I need collaboration for in order to get my brain going. And this is usually more like creative tasks. So if I'm focusing on something more life admin, that is more like process driven, or kind of very clear what I'm doing there, then it's easy for me to sit behind my computer. But when it becomes a creative task where I need to use my creativity and kind of this like helicopter view of a vision, then I really like to kind of collaborate and brainstorm. And I think when you work remotely, you often kind of forget that you have the resource of your colleagues, or you have the people as a resource who are actually around you. um, and it may not necessarily feel natural to reach out to your colleagues who are sitting opposite you online, to ask for a brainstorm session. But I really think that this idea of knowing what works for you, and even if it feels contradicting or uncomfortable, create the environment that will help you. Another example is, I often like idealize the idea of working from home from my setup, where I have my double screen and my comfortable chair and all of those things, until I realize I really need to get out and switch off my environment in order for, again, some of my ideas to start flowing better. So again, it's not about being perfect and hitting all those productivity hacks and fitting into this idea of great and what great looks like. It's more about knowing what works for you and creating spaces to cater for these needs in order to succeed in your world and work. And again, don't forget about the softness that you can allow yourself within these difficult parts, because again, we're learning and unlearning a lot of these within the new environments we're operating in. And then number 3, the paradox of freedom. I came across Andrea Zittel's quote. She's an American artist working with space and furniture. She says, "What makes us feel liberated is not total freedom, but rather living in a set of limitations that we've created and prescribed for ourselves." So obviously with remote work, we've come to come to see more freedom and choices. And more freedom and choices requires, most often than not, more work to decide what works for us, what is a yes or a no. So I really wanted to bring this idea of of creating a set of limitations for ourselves to actually feel better about the things we are doing and feel more success, feel more at ease, or feel better at being able to reach the things we actually want to work towards. Um, I'm also someone that loved the idea, or loves the idea of being free and having choices, but have also many times been paralyzed by overload of choice and then the paralysis of decision making. And again, I think this remote setup opens up a world of opportunities that sometimes in theory sound amazing, but sometimes in practice can actually make us feel uh, stressed or unable to make a decision and know what's good for us. Um, so I want to ask again, or offer the question: what are you going to say no to so you can start operating within your zones of hell yes? So some of the examples I've kind of set out for myself are, some more obvious than others, is setting clear working hours. Don't break these. Respect yourself. Um, I do like the idea of working at times when you best work, and I think some remote companies are pretty good at offering this flexibility. But whether or not you like to get your work done in the morning or in the afternoon or at night also depends on time zones, of course. Set those working hours and try not to break them. Um, don't work in an environment you won't get work done in just because you can. So I think remote work often brings this idea of like working on the beach or working outside. I can tell you the worst thing, at least for me, to do is to bring my laptop outside and have the suns, reflect back on my face and I can't see anything. So pick and choose your environment wisely. Just because you can go and work anywhere, it doesn't mean you should. Um, be clear with yourself about when you are available to colleagues, family, and when you are in do not disturb times. I think we forget the importance of these sacred times, and kind of goes back to this idea of putting yourself into focus mode and flow. Um, and I can attest to the fact that when you're home, there's more distractions. There's family, there's partners, there's roommates, let alone the colleagues you're working with online. So really try and be clear both online and in your physical presence about when are your sacred times, when you're focusing on yourself and the work you're doing. And again, lead that with respect for yourself. So don't break them. Don't be tempted to reach for the phone or check your messages. Um, and try and create a quiet, private zone for yourself. I have to put this one there, remote work or not, but be intentional about your social media usage and the amount of time you spend on Slack talking to your colleagues. I think uh, we do this regardless of not if whether or not we're working remotely. But in my own experience, having spent increased amounts of times physically alone, there's a tendency to want to connect more, and you kind of lose the intention sometimes and end up realizing, well, I've scrolled on LinkedIn again for however many, like 20 minutes, or I'm doing a lot of chat with my colleagues, which can be wonderful, but it does kind of get in the way of being intentional about the times when you do them, and then not letting them come in the way of your focus time, for example. So really try and be intentional on how and when and for how long you use these platforms and what for. um, and I like this idea of doing the one thing. So each day, uh, try and kind of create your limitations by saying, well, I'm gonna do this one thing today, and the other things then can become second priority, or you can postpone them. And again, this way you kind of gain freedom within that limitation because you know what you're focusing on, you know what you're trying to accomplish. Now's the time again to, I know we're pre-recording this, so you don't actually need to meet yourself, but if you want to get the hell out for a second and take your break, do it. I know it's a lot of talk and you're probably going to be watching a lot of these talks, and we have been doing this for a while, so I commend you for being here. So yeah, go ahead and do whatever you need to do. Gonna sip some water for the time being. If and when you're back, I want to wrap up by asking you to have a little reflection and maybe think about some of the things that you struggle with the most. Could be some of the things I said, or it could be other things as far as working remotely goes, but with a focus on yourself. Are you struggling to have your morning routine and connect with yourself first, or are you one of those people that gets overloaded by choice and the freedom, and you maybe need to create some kind of container for yourself? Then it would be a great idea to pick something and say what will be the one thing you will change. And then accountability is always a beautiful way to actually execute on something you intend to do. So write down how will you stay accountable, and really do write these three things down, because it's one thing to think about it and it's another to actually use again that part of your brain that will kind of activate the action part. And so, yeah, just wrapping up like all the things I was saying as a take home message, I think the three kind of takeaways from my kind of reflection on remote work and how it works for me is number one, connect with yourself first before everyone else in the world. Nurture your conditions for magic. So by that, what I mean is don't try and fix yourself, but nurture the conditions that will bring the best version and your magic out of you. And then create your container of limitations. So don't swim in this endless opportunity of freedom. Really try and be intentional about what are the containers I can best operate in. And that's me. Whatever questions you have, send them my way. You can drop me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. And yeah, great to be here.